Welcome to the American Chronicles podcast. I'm Vlad Davidjak. Amy Kremer was born and raised in Marietta, Georgia, and is running to fill the seat left vacant in Georgia's 6th District by longtime Congressman Tom Price, who joined the Trump administration as Secretary of Health and Human Services. Over the last 9 years, Amy has been on the front lines of the grassroots battles for America as one of the founders of the modern-day Tea Party movement. She's also the co-founder of Tea Party Patriots and former chairman of Tea Party Express, and was instrumental in helping to elect conservatives like Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, Mike Lee, and Rand Paul. She joined the show to discuss her candidacy and vision for the office. Coming up next on the American Chronicles. We're joined now by Amy Kremer, who's a candidate for U.S. Congress to replace Tom Price, who took over the role of Health and Human Services Secretary in the Trump administration for Georgia 6th Congressional District. Amy Kremer, welcome to the American Chronicles.
Vlad, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and talk with you.
I'm excited to have you as well. You are a legend in the grassroots circles with regard to not only local and grassroots activism, but the Tea Party as well. You were instrumental in the rise of the actual ability of several candidates to reach out to numerous groups and to be much more successful than they would have been without your assistance. Ted Cruz, Matt Bevin, among others. You've worked diligently, not only these past few years, but for an extended period of time on getting the grassroots involved and getting activists involved in the political process, and now you're taking the next step yourself. Talk to us a little bit about your journey as far as that's concerned.
Well, I thank you, and I got to correct you on one thing. I'm not a legend. I'm just a mom doing what I believe in, but you're very kind. I'm one of the founders of the movement and have been involved for the past 8 or 9 years working to elect conservatives across the country, coast to coast, with the firm belief that if we really do want to change things, we have to change the players. We cannot continue to send the same people there and expect different results. And so I have worked with, like you said, Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, Mike Lee, Marco Rubio, you name them. There are a lot of them out there. Honestly, I can't even remember all the candidates that I've worked with. And I never had any intentions to run myself. It's not something that I ever thought that I would do. I love working in the grassroots and meeting all these people and working on the causes that we believe in. But at the end of the election, after Trump won, and it was like, we have achieved what we've been working on for so long. And then he appointed Tom Price as HHS Secretary. It was kind of like was there in front of me. I am one that believes that, how can I tell others and encourage others to go out there and do something if I'm not willing to do it myself? And I have been going across the country encouraging regular, everyday, average Americans to get involved and get into the process, step out of your safe space and put yourself out there, because we need real, regular people in Washington and in our city and state bureaucracies representing us. And so here it is in front of me. And how can I go out and encourage others to do it if I'm not willing to do it myself? And considering the fact that I had worked on the front lines with Tom Price from the beginning, before Obamacare was even called Obamacare, I felt like, here it is. It's a special election. It's, a very short period of time that we qualified. It was 2 weeks ago today that we qualified, and then the election is April 18th. And it's a jungle primary, so that there's 18 candidates in it, 11 Republicans, 5 Dems, and 2 independents. And the top 2, if no one gets 50 plus 1, the top 2 will go to a runoff, and that will be June 20th. So it's a sprint, but you know what? I figured I can do it. For that amount of time, I can do it. And I believe in the cause. I mean, it's in my heart and soul. And so here I am. And I can tell you why I think I am the most qualified. And that is because I am the only candidate in this race that can say they've actually worked in Washington to get the legislation passed before. You see what's happening right now with, I believe, the Republicans are trying to slow roll Trump's agenda by dragging their feet. It's ridiculous that they haven't passed any legislation and sent it to the president to sign. And considering that that's the environment, Vlad, we need somebody to go in there and be willing to stand with Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan and the others and know the ropes. And I do know them. I could walk in there and they would welcome me because I've been on the front lines fighting with them to get them elected and once they were in there. And no one else in this race can say that. And I think that's important. I think that's the environment we're in right now, and that's the reality of the situation. And we cannot allow this, what we worked so hard to do to elect Donald Trump, we can't allow all that, the good work and effort and time and energy we put into that, we can't allow it to go to waste. We need to continue to fight, and that means fighting our own if necessary.
We're speaking with Amy Kremer. She's a candidate to replace the outgoing Tom Price from Congressional District 6 in Georgia. You can see her website at amykramerforcongress.com. You can also follow her on Twitter at Amy Kremer. Amy, you've actually outlined very brilliantly the rationale for your campaign and the motive behind why you're doing what you're doing. But none of that would have happened, as you said first, without, first of all, President Trump appointing Tom Price as HHS secretary. But underlying that is this environment that we find ourselves in now, where there's been a sea change in politics, where the experienced, long-time career bureaucrat is not looked at favorably in terms of being someone who can take a leadership role, and instead we're looking towards the grassroots, something that you've had a lot of experience not only in participating in, but in actually helping to build up.
Right.
What are you seeing? What are you seeing out there in terms of people who you're interacting with? Because obviously you're working to not only get yourself elected into Congress, but you're working to build up other people to follow you as well.
Exactly, and I am not, honestly, I'm just being very honest here, I'm not one that's good at self-promotion. I know a lot of people do that, and it is necessary. I don't usually do that. I'm just not comfortable because it's not about me, it's about all of us together. And when I talk about this campaign, I say we because when I win, it's us winning, and we are going to win it. I have said it many times before, that behind every congressman and senator, there's a great team. They can't do it without the people around them. And so I have worked on building up a good team that I trust, close people, and the most important thing about these people is that they believe in the importance of the grassroots. They are like you and I and understand that this is not an election that you can go in and buy. And there are candidates that are putting millions into it and are trying to buy the election. They're up on TV and they're on the radio and ads are everywhere and robocalls and all this, but at the end of the day, I think the people are smarter than that, and they know that they're going to look at all the candidates and evaluate each one, and they'll make their choice, and I believe that they will come to me. I've lived in this district my entire life. I believe I'm the only candidate in this race that can say that. And so I know a lot of people here, and it's really been amazing. The past week, I had just announced about a week ago because I'd had the flu and my dad's been sick and whatnot, but I announced about a week ago, and I just posted on Facebook a little while ago that it's been overwhelming the amount of support, the people that have come out of the woodwork to support me and to let me know they're willing to help me. They'll put signs in their yard and do anything that I can. We've had people going knocking on doors for the past 2 weeks, which is really amazing. Past week and a half. They started not this past weekend, but the weekend before. And to know, and these are young people that have come here from other states, colleges, to help me win this election. And that's really been encouraging to see these young people that are picking up and coming to Georgia for 2 months to help me win. And until they got here, they really didn't know me. They knew what they could find on the internet and whatnot. But we went to dinner last week with not the entire team, but a lot of the team. There were 11 of us at that dinner. And when I walked out of there, I said to James, I am so inspired. Those kids, I know that we're going to win this. And so it's really been encouraging, but I'm not going to get ahead of myself. I'm going to be out there working right alongside of them and working until that very last ballot's cast on Election Day.
Let's talk about the issues that you bring up you on your webpage you have a variety of issues that you address in terms of how you'd like to tackle them and what approach you'd like to use. I know Georgia has had some issues with regard to economic growth and opportunity, and one of the very first things that you bring up on your page is jobs in the economy. What do you see in terms of not only Georgia but the United States in terms of those things?
Well, I mean, we need to not only cut, get our debt and deficit under control on the national level. We need to. I mean, there's a variety of things that need to be done, and Donald Trump has already started that with the regulations and getting rid of TPP. I was a big founder or a big believer in that. We didn't need that huge trade deal. So he's gotten rid of that, but we need to create a pro-growth environment where money is being put back into the pockets of the people. And businesses have confidence in the economy. Businesses don't go out there and operate, on a short timeline. They plan out for years, and there hasn't been a lot of confidence in the economy. So we need to create that pro-growth environment where businesses are taking their money and investing it back into their companies for R&D, for job growth, those sort of things. And I think that, through cutting regulations, which Donald Trump has already started to do, and doing tax cuts, both personal and corporate taxes. As you know, we have one of the highest corporate tax rates in the world. I think that is going to help create that pro-growth environment to jumpstart the economy. And I've said for a long time, we don't need another attorney in the White House. We need a businessman that understands economics and how trade works and all of that. And here we have somebody, and I do think he gets it. And I think that's what he's working on. And as you know, he's a bulldog, and he's not going to let anybody slow him down. He wants to do this, and he believes in it. And so I think we're already taking the steps to create that pro-growth environment that we so need.
Now, Tom Price is the new HHS secretary. He's who you're running to replace in Congress. And Tom Price had extensive experience with the medical field in Georgia. He was practicing for a long time. So he had experience from the front lines with regard to how healthcare was functioning or actually dysfunctioning in Georgia. Obviously, Republicans in Congress are working to repeal Obamacare. They're working to find a replacement that works for Americans. What has been your experience with regard to healthcare and replacing it, Obamacare, with something that works in the free market? And also, obviously, this is something that you're experiencing on a daily basis there in Georgia, interacting with your fellow grassroots activists and your potential constituents. So what's the approach there?
Well, I've always said that, number one, healthcare, not everyone is a doctor, but every single one of us are a patient. So this touches everybody. I've also believed for a long time that we need to act more as consumers when in healthcare. That what happened was with Obamacare, it was insurance reform. It was not healthcare reform, and we have lost. I mean, doctors are not seeing patients anymore. They're retiring because they ended up under Obamacare with so much regulation and control coming from the federal bureaucracy that they ended up spending more time doing their paperwork and doing all the necessary requirements and actually tending to the patients, spending time actually helping their patients. And so we need to get government, as you know, I believe, out of our lives and put health care back in between the patient and the doctor. And I think we as patients also need to look at ourselves as consumers of health care. If I remember, I have one daughter, she'll be 27 soon, but when she was young, I would take her to the doctor, and, we'd go in, and he would see her and check her out. She had an ear infection, bronchitis, whatever. He'd write her prescription, and we'd be on our way out of there. I had to pay the $20 copay, whatever, and he would go through and check all these things on, the form. And I never considered the cost of it because I had great insurance from my employer, and so I just paid that $20 copay. Well, I guarantee you that had I been paying that out of pocket and looked at all those things, I may not have selected all those things, chosen all those things. And the insurance companies and providers are the ones that are setting all this stuff, are setting the guidelines and the pricing and all this for the services we're receiving. And as somebody put it so eloquently recently, that if you were to go into the grocery store and you wanted to buy a bunch of stuff, and somebody else was buying that same stuff in another cart, but depending on what cards you had in your pocket, there were different prices for your stuff, and then that person had different prices, somebody would be screaming discrimination. That's basically what's been going on with the healthcare industry with insurance, that we're all paying different things according to the different providers and whatnot, and we need to be consumers, and we need to be in control of that and not let the insurance companies be in control of that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It's something that requires free market dictate what the results are. We can't have government picking winners and losers. We can't have government dictating to people what level of care they must purchase. That's up to the individuals. That approach is exactly what's needed right now.
It is. We need to take back control of it by being consumers. Yes, free market solutions. We need to be able to purchase across state lines. I do believe you should be able to take your insurance with you if you change employers. There are a number of things that can be done, and Tom Price is a doctor. He's an orthopedic doctor, and I am hoping that with him as head of HHS, that we are the Republicans in control, that we are going to get the type of health care reform that we actually need, because we have a doctor that has practiced and understands, what's been going on here. I hope that he's going to lead us in that direction, because, Vlad, I certainly hope that the Republicans don't become weak-kneed on this. Too many times, like with our national debt, you can't lay all that at the feet of the Democrats. Republicans are just as responsible for the out-of-control spending as the Democrats. And I hope and pray that now that we have this historic opportunity with Donald Trump in the White House and Republicans holding the House and the Senate, I hope and pray that they don't lack the courage or get weak knees and don't push health care reform through, repealing and replacing Obamacare, because I am afraid of that. They certainly are dragging their feet on this, and it's concerning to many across the country.
It seems to me it's not only that they're dragging their feet, but it seems to me that there's no ability to either find consensus or no desire to find consensus on a plan to go forward and put it on the floor and vote on it and move forward from there. What do you attribute that to? I mean, to me, it doesn't make any sense, because Obamacare was passed 6 years ago, and they've had that time to formulate a plan, to come up with a solution, and yet now here's the time that's perfect to actually put it forward, and no plan is appearing on the floor, and we have multiple representatives who have announced that they have a plan or they're working on a plan, but there seems to be no unity in coming forward. Is that just cowardice in pushing forward on a solution, or is that people who have their own vested interests trying to make sure that they get their idea through?
I think it is that maybe a little bit of both. I think that look, at the end of the day, they need money to run for re-election unless they can self-fund. And sadly, when people are elected, the very next thing they're thinking about is raising money for their next re-election. And that is what that's how the congressional committee works, the NRCC works. You have to go in and raise all this money, and they get money from the insurance companies, all these lobbyists. And if you go and look at FEC reports, you can see who's given money to them. And I think that the insurance companies have been putting money in their campaign coffers, and they don't have to stand up and fight and say, we're not going to do this. They don't have to sing. They can just not pledge their support to Rand Paul or whoever it is that has an actual plan. And if nobody comes and gets behind it, then it's not going to go anywhere. And it's easy when you have, 435 members of Congress, and they're all blaming each other. I mean, it's like, who can you really point your finger at? Well, no one, because there's no leader of this effort to stop it, because they're certainly not going to do that. So I think that, number one, there are, I hate to say it, but there are cowards up there. But number two, I do think that it's about their own self-interest. At the end of the day, it's about their own self-interest, and that's sad. And that is why this opportunity is so historic right now for the 6th District and for our nation, because finally with Donald Trump in the White House, we can change the way that Washington does business. That's why this race is so important, and it's truly a historic opportunity for us.
We're speaking with Amy Kremer. She's a candidate to replace outgoing Tom Price from Georgia's 6th District. You can follow her on Twitter at Amy Kremer. You can see her website, amykramerforcongress.com. Now, Amy, last night, President Trump delivered his first address to the joint session of Congress. First of all, what did you think about the speech? But secondly, he touched on a lot of important topics, including healthcare, including national security. One of the topics that really generated a lot of response was his some of his proposals with regard to immigration and border security. And I know Georgia is not a border state. I live in Houston, Texas. We have a direct access to the border with Mexico, so we see a different sort of impact than maybe some of the other states do. So I guess talk about what you think about President Trump's speech, and then if you would, talk about what you think is the impact of immigration and border security on Georgia and what you'd like to do to respond to it.
Well, I think his speech was amazing. To me, just when he walked in, there was something about him that he just looked so presidential, and he stood up there, and that's the best speech I think he's ever given. And I know a lot of people agree with me. It was just absolutely amazing, and I was really proud of him to have given that speech and to represent not only our country but to a Republican Party. So, and I hope that we see more of that. We definitely need to see more of that. As far as immigration and border security goes, we are not, like you said, we're not a state that is on the border, but I can tell you that we do have a lot of immigrants here, and it's something that concerns all of us because, as you and I both know, our not having a secure border is causing a lot of problems for our country in a number of different ways. And, whether it be the drugs, the crimes that are being committed, that sort of thing. I can tell you here in Atlanta, we have a heroin problem. That there's a triangle, it's called the Black Triangle. I think 11 Alive did a story on it a couple of months ago, and it's this region where it's a big problem. And I actually live in that triangle. But so while we're not a border state, it definitely affects us. And I think really it just goes back to, at the end of the day, most Americans, I think, we are a nation of immigrants. Absolutely we are. And all of us came from somewhere. And I want to continue to see people immigrate to America. It is the great melting pot, but we want them to do it legally. And as Donald Trump has said before, without borders, you don't have a nation. We're not a sovereign nation without borders. So I do believe we have to deal with the problem. Let's secure the borders. And yes, we have a lot of illegal immigrants here. And how are we going to deal with the people that are here? And I think he's taken the right approach in getting out the bad dudes. I think what do you call them, the bad dudes first.
Bad hombres.
But at the same time, there are a lot of things that come into this, and it's not going to be easy, and it is going to take time to do it. But I do think with courage and a spine, and Donald Trump has that, I do think it can be done.
Now, one thing that President Trump mentioned that made me excited is his enthusiastic support for school choice. He highlighted not only how it's important for education here in America to be improved, period, but how important it is for so many students who have to endure attending substandard schools because they don't have the ability to choose where they want to go and which teachers they want to have teaching their students. Right now in the Texas legislature, we have the opportunity to move forward on school choice, but it looks like the chairman of the Education Committee, who is a Republican, is saying that it's not going to move forward, even though we have majorities in both houses of the legislature. What's the status of school choice in Georgia? And obviously you want to take power away from the Federal Department of Education and have Georgia make decisions for Georgia school kids. But what's the status of school choice in Georgia, and what would you like to do going forward on that?
Well, I think school choice is a huge issue because our children are our future, and I mean, they are the future of our nation. And as parents, I don't know if you're a parent, but as I said, I am a parent, and as parents, we should want what is best for our children. And that's one thing, Vlad, I can say is that as somebody that traveled from coast to coast, I can totally understand why. The Department of Education is one of the largest bloated bureaucracies in the federal government, and they don't have one school, one child, one teacher. I mean, it was a department that was formed to hand out grants. They have a 500-page plus book of grants that are allocated, and that was their original purpose. Now, as I said, it's become one of the most bloated departments in the federal government. Canada, on the other hand, has no federal Department of Education. Their school, it's made on a local and state level, and their students are consistently scoring higher than U.S. students on math and science consistently. And this has been, I think that study came from Cato back in 2006. There's probably an updated one. But so being somebody that has traveled from coast to coast and seen Alaska and then all the way down to Florida, it's common sense to understand that what works in Alaska is not going to be the same thing that obviously works in Hawaii or here in Georgia. And it needs to be made on a local and state level. It needs to be put back into the hands of the parents and children, or the parents and local authorities, the school board. That's where the decision needs to be made. And I'm a big proponent of that, and I'm glad to see that he has he's brought in Ms. DeVos as chair of Department of Education, and I hope that going forward we can educate more people about school choice, and that's actually putting it back into the hands of the parents where we can decide what is best for our children, and they can actually get the education that we want them to get and that they deserve, quite frankly. It's not right for any for those children to have to sit, in these schools that, like you said, I think are subpar and not get what they deserve and need when they could if some bureaucrats would just change the laws.
We're speaking with Amy Kremer, who's a candidate for Congress, Congressional District 6 in Georgia. You can follow her on Twitter at Amy Kremer. You can see her website, amykramerforcongress.com. Now, Amy, one of the things that is causing one of the biggest opposition to school choice comes from school districts and school administrators who rely on taxes to fund their operations, and so they're always in opposition to any move to lower property taxes, any move to restrict the growth of taxes. You've taken a very strong position on taxes overall, not only with regard to individual taxes but corporate taxes. the increases that were put in place by the Obama regime are not something that can continue to be allowed to exist if we're going to have any long-term growth. What is your approach with regard to how we address taxes?
Well, I think that we obviously we need to look at. I'm thinking about Georgia here in this T-SPLOST. It was a transportation tax that they tried to push through a couple of years ago, and it failed. And we have another one coming up here. This is the thing: is that they may not call it a tax. Whoever is proposing this tax, they may not call it a tax. They may call it something else. But at the end of the day, Vlad, whenever they put these things in place, we're going to do this T-SPLOST to help our schools do this, and this, give them money to fund this, and this, and then it's going to end in 5 years or whatever. I can't remember the specifics of T-SPLOST. But the point is that whenever it comes to an end, it never ends. They find a way to continue it, to continue to tax for whatever. We had that recently with a toll road here in Atlanta, Georgia 400, but they did finally take the toll booths out, and it did end. But I think as taxpayers and consumers, we need to definitely watch, on every level, local, state, and federal, what taxes are being imposed on us, and be vigilant about it. That I don't think, because when they tax us, that gives them power and authority. The money that they're taking to tax us gives them power and authority. I think that, like I said earlier, that Donald Trump, he wants to lower the income tax rate on corporate and individual. And I think that we do need to have, a simpler, flatter tax. No one, I certainly have to hire somebody to do my taxes. You probably do. And it shouldn't be so difficult for us. And then, different states, we have a state income tax here in Georgia. Some states don't. I think Tennessee doesn't have a state income tax. But we're paying taxes on so many different levels. And like I said, when we pay taxes, that gives them power and authority. Giving them that money, the transfer of money to them gives them that power and authority, whoever they may be. And I think that as just taxpayers, as citizens of this country, we have to watch that and be vigilant about it and go out and fight. If you believe in a cause that they shouldn't raise taxes on us, then you need to go out and fight and do that. Stand up, go to the city council meeting or, the county commission meetings, whatever it may be, and it may not be something that people, are used to doing, but we have to have our voices heard, because if you just pay that tax and give them that power and authority, like I said, they're going to continue to take it. When it ends, it's not going to end, or they're going to come back for more. And it happens on every single level, as you and I have both seen across this country all the time.
One of the most egregious uses of tax dollars that Democrats are really pushing on really hard right now is with taxpayer funding for abortions. Now, abortion providers like Planned Parenthood insist that taxpayer dollars are not used to perform abortions, but we all know that money is fungible, that basically sending them money to pay for their rent offsets the costs that they would need somewhere else, so they can then use the money they get from other things to do additional abortions. I know you're 100% pro-life, and so you're working really hard to end the scourge of abortion, but right now it looks as if the Republicans in Congress are not, number one, they're not doing anything to defund Planned Parenthood yet. Number two, they don't seem to be providing as much opposition to the elimination of the Hyde Amendment as they should be, because Democrats are pushing really hard against that. What are you going to do when you get to Congress with regard to abortion?
Well, I do absolutely agree. I am 100% pro-life, and I don't think that any of our taxpayer money should go to fund Planned Parenthood or any other organization around the world that is providing abortions. Absolutely not. And I will stand up and fight for that. And the thing is, like the question you just asked me, it is not it is not so simple that you can explain to people. We all know that people form their ideas and opinions now based on sound bites, and it's not just a small sound bite to explain how Planned Parenthood is paying for performing abortions, and our money is going to fund that. It's not so simple to explain that. And if it were so simple, I think more people would understand it. I am going to stand up and fight for that. And it's not going to be easy. You're going to get, look at what happened in Texas with Wendy Davis and all that went on there several years ago. It's not going to be easy because the left this is one thing that they are absolutely determined, because it's the war on women. Women can I don't know any woman that doesn't have access to health care, to what they need from a doctor. And to say that women don't have access to these things is just flat out wrong. And so we need strong conservatives that are going to stand up there and fight and say that, we're not going to give in to this, no matter how much they pressure us. We're not going to give in to it, and we need to continue to go out there and explain it to people and explain why, even though it's not that small soundbite. Vlad, I have friends that are pro-choice, but you know what? They still don't believe that our taxpayer dollars should be funding abortion, and they're pro-choice. So I think this is something that we can get more people to understand if we take the time and explain it to them how this happens.
I agree. I think it's something that the public needs to be much more educated on, because what winds up happening, it's very easy for somebody like Cecile Richards to simply get on CNN and say not $1 of taxpayer money is going to fund abortions, and abortions only account for 3% of our annual business, which is, both of those things are actually lies with regard to the actual functional truth, because the fact is that every single dollar that Planned Parenthood gets goes, even if it doesn't go directly to paying for the cost of an abortion, it goes to paying for something that helps support that operation. And it doesn't matter if abortion only accounts for 3% of an operation, it accounts for probably 80 or 90% of their profit. And the fact is that needs to end one way or another. And it's disheartening for me that Republicans, even though we have majorities in both houses of Congress, have not done anything more aggressively to eliminate funding for Planned Parenthood and for any abortion provider, but specifically Planned Parenthood, because they're the standard bearer.
Right. Absolutely they are.
We've been speaking with Amy Kremer, who's a candidate for Congressional District 6 in Georgia. She's running to replace Tom Price, who became the Health and Human Services Secretary. You can follow her on Twitter at Amy Kremer, and you can also find her website, amykramerforcongress.com. Amy, do you have any last things you'd like to leave the listeners with regard to your candidacy? Obviously, you're campaigning across Georgia. You're back in the bus again, I guess, and seeing people in the district and talking to people, and all those things are important. But at the same time, you to really run in Congress now, you almost have to have people who look in and see the possibilities of the candidacy and actually want to get involved in the process. It's not like the old days where a candidate could go and talk to one or two people and build up a war chest and then run in. This is the ground has shifted, and you now need to build a larger network. So what parting thoughts do you have?
Well, I just want to say one thing back to the abortion thing, and this goes for school choice and a lot of things.
Sure.
When we are fighting these things, we are so good at, beating up, hounding these congressmen and women when we want them to do something or when they don't do what we want them to do. And we're not so good at showing support and praising them when they do the right thing. And so we need to, it doesn't matter how bad the left comes after us, because we know that they're going to come after us. We've all seen George Soros fund all this stuff. They're going to come after us. You cannot let that deter you. You need to be there and stand strong for your beliefs and stand with your congressman or congresswoman and support them even when the left is attacking them at these town halls, whatever it may be, because it's much easier for them to fight for and do things, continue to do those things, when they know they have an army of people behind them supporting them. It's easier for them to stand up to the left than to just cave and give the left what they want if they know that they have a lot of support. So I want to encourage people to continue to do that. And look, this race is going to be won on the ground. It is going to be won by meeting people, telling people what I'm about, why I believe in this, and asking them for their vote and for to believe in me. And I'm going to go to Congress and stand firm and I will fight from day one. I'm not going to have to learn the ropes. And that's what concerns me, is that we have a lot of candidates here, some that have run a number of times, perennial candidates. They've run a number of times, people that want to buy it because they think it's their next step or whatever. They've never been up there. They're going to go to Washington, and they can say they're standing with Donald Trump. They're going to fight with Donald Trump, but Vlad, Donald Trump's not at Capitol Hill. He's not on Capitol Hill. Donald Trump is in a different arm of the government. He's at the White House. And so when you walk into, the Congress and there's 435 other members and you want to fight for something, but you've got all the leadership and the pressure of all these members, the establishment that's been there forever, I'm afraid these guys are going to cave because they want to fit in. They want to be part of, the club there. And I'm going to tell you what, I'm not going to fit in. I will fight from day one because I've been there fighting. I just didn't have the title of Congresswoman. I am going to continue to fight for the people because that's what I've been doing for so long. I've carried the values of the 6th District with me as I've crossed this country coast to coast, and now I've come home, and I want to work for the people of the 6th District. I think I have a proven record, and I do think that I'm going to win because I believe that that's what they want to continue. They want continued representation into this good fight. I mean, this is a conservative district, and they need a fighter in Washington. We all do. So I know I'm going to get their support. I believe in this race. I think I'm doing it for the right reasons. And those across the country that want to support me can go to amykremerforcongress.com. It's not up there now, but they can phone bank from across the country, mail postcards. You can follow me on Twitter. And if you're here in the 6th District, we'd love to put a sign in your yard. I mean, it takes money. So if you can donate to my campaign at amykremerforcongress.com, every dollar counts. And like I said, we're going up against some that are putting in millions. But we can do it. We can absolutely do it. Look at Eric Cantor and Dave Bratt. That tells you right there that we can do it.
Absolutely. Amy Kremer is a mother. She's one of the founders of the modern-day Tea Party movement. She's a co-founder of Tea Party Patriots and former chairman of the Tea Party Express. She's been on the front lines fighting alongside lots of other grassroots activists, and she's helped make possible the elections of people like Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, Mike Lee, and Rand Paul to the United States Senate. She'd like to join them in Congress from Congressional District 6 in Georgia. As she said, you can see her website, amykremerforcongress.com. You can follow her on Twitter at Amy Kremer. Amy Kremer, thank you so much for joining us here on the American Chronicles.
Thank you so much, Vlad, for having me, and I hope to see you again soon.
Absolutely. Best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Well, that brings us to the end of the show. Check out my website, vladdavicic.com, and make sure you follow me on Twitter, at vladdavicic. Please give the show a great rating and review on iTunes. It really helps other people find us when they're searching for a show they might love. As always, until the next time, remember, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty, and freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction.